Question for you. What do you think is the best, easiest, and fastest pasta sauce that you can make? If you answered pesto pasta, you are 100% right. So in this video, we are gonna make a delicious pesto sauce. I'm gonna head outside of the garden. I'm gonna grab a bunch of basil. While I'm out there, also gonna grab some tomatoes. We're gonna take the basil. We're gonna make a delicious pesto sauce out of it. It's gonna take only a couple minutes, and we're also gonna saute some tomatoes and some garlic and throw that on top. This is gonna be a fabulous bowl of pasta. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. If there's one thing I love about the end of summer, early fall, is how much basil we have. So we planted this basil in the springtime, and we've been picking at it, so it's been growing like crazy, and you can see how much that we have here. And I only have maybe about a month to use this stuff, and pesto is such a great application for using a lot of basil, because you need a lot of basil to make a pesto sauce. So before we wash this, we're going to pull off any of the yellow or discolored or brown leaves, and then we're going to give this a wash in the sink. During my mom's spaghetti video, there was a little worm that didn't wash off, so I'm going to pay extra attention to make sure that I wash each one of these individually to make sure no bugs end up in this sauce. Now we're going to pick off the leaves one by one. If they have some water clinging to them, I actually find that a little beneficial because it's going to draw a little bit of moisture into the pesto sauce, which is going to make it blend up really nice, at least when we do the first processing. So we're going to pull off all of these leaves one by one, and this is one of those steps that might take a little bit of time, but please make sure to take the time. Everybody's looking for shortcuts with cooking. There's some stuff that can't be shortcutted, and pulling these leaves off one by one and not putting in any of the bigger stems is going to be a really important part of making a delicious and lovely pesto sauce. We're going to set those aside and let's talk pasta. So we're going to go penne pasta, and one thing I want to bring to your attention here is that pasta tells you to use 4 to 6 quarts of water. We're going to drop that down to 3 quarts of water, and the reason we want to do that is we want the water to be extra starchy so the water can be in the emulsifier of the sauce. I think using 4 to 6 quarts of water is a little too much water, and we're not going to get a starchy water that's going to help us build this sauce. The one thing that we do have to kind of cook is we're going to toast these pine nuts. So these pine nuts are just going to be lightly toasted over a medium heat until you get this nice golden brown color. Please make sure not to go too fast. You can smell when they're starting to get toasted. Now we're going to take these pine nuts, we're going to put them in the food processor along with some powdered Pecorino Romano cheese, and we're going to shred in some fresh Parmesan. I like to use the blend of the two cheeses. I think they complement each other really well. Surprise, surprise, we're going to put in a little garlic, but this garlic's going in raw, so we're not going to use too much. Raw garlic is very, very strong, so only a couple cloves. I can't tell you the last time I put just 3 cloves of garlic in something, but this is still going a little overboard on this, but I think it's the perfect amount. And if you can find all of the ingredient list and the ratios in the description box. So now we're going to push in these basil leaves. And you can see that with all of those plants, this is all the leaves that we got. So make sure that when you're starting this recipe that you have a lot of basil. Basil's something that grows really easy in the garden, so I suggest next spring to get some basil going. And for a little acidity, we're going to put in just a little bit of lemon juice and make sure none of the seeds go in. Now we're going to take our food processor and we're going to pulse these ingredients dry. I haven't put any oil in there, and I'm just trying to get everything just a little bit chopped up. Remember, a food processor is not magic. You have to work it a little bit. So we cut up some things, and we're going to push it down into the blades as we're trying to get this initial processing. So once everything's a little chopped up, you can see that there aren't any more big leaves in here. We're going to push everything down, and now we're going to drizzle in our oil a little bit at a time and just keep pulsing and running this thing until we're getting the right consistency. You can always add more oil. You can't take it out, and you want to make sure that you don't over mix your oil. So we're going to go in just a little bit at a time, just like we're making cement. Little bit, mix, a little bit, mix, until we get the right consistency. Now, if you look at the consistency of this, you can see we're getting pretty close. We probably just need just a little bit more oil, so we'll add that oil in. We'll give it a little bit of mix. And remember, we're mixing this with blades, so every time we're mixing it, we're also making it a little bit more fine, so we got to be careful not to overdo it. We're going to add just a pinch of salt because a lot of that cheese brings in salt. And we're going to give this a final mix. And the consistency you're looking for in the end is like this runny, wet cement consistency. And we're going to transfer this over to a container. We're going to set this aside. And now let's deal with our pasta because it's got to go in the water. So we're going to salt our water pretty liberally. And then we're going to add the pasta. This is going to cook pretty fast, so while this is cooking, we can make our tomato topping. I've always wanted to try this trick to see if it works well, so we're going to take this plastic container and see if we can have these cherry tomatoes all at once. These are one of those like kitchen hacks that I've always wondered whether it's really a hack or not. And the result here was okay. We did get most of them to cut in half. They were a little uneven, and we're going to have to go back in and cut some that I missed with the knife anyway. So I think this is one of those kitchen hacks that you could probably go without, and I probably could have just saved the same amount of time and got better results if I just cut the tomatoes one by one. But now we know. And these tomatoes are absolutely delicious, super duper sweet, so they don't need much. They're just going to get backed up with a little bit of garlic. So we're going to take some of these cloves of garlic, we're going to crush them, and then we're going to put a fine mince on them. And these are not going to cook for very long, so we want that garlic to be pretty fine. And now, over a medium-high heat, we're going to put a little olive oil. We're going to throw in these tomatoes. These tomatoes are going to cook super quick, so as soon as I start to see them blister even the tiniest little bit, we're going to throw in that garlic. We're going to give it a mix. The garlic's going to get very, very fragrant. And then we're going to add just a little bit of pepper and some salt. And these things are done within a few minutes. And this is going to be the beautiful topping to go on top of this pesto sauce. So now that our pasta is very close, and we're going to pull our pasta at al dente, we're going to take some of this pesto sauce, we're going to put this at the bottom of a bowl, and then we're going to use our spider to pull the pasta out of the water. And because we're using a penne pasta, some water's going inside the little tubes and is getting drawn into the pasta. So we're bringing in a little bit of that pasta water without having to pour in extra. And I just find this to be an easy way to add the pasta to the pesto sauce. And now we're going to take some more pesto sauce, we're going to put it on top, and now we're going to give this a mix. So we got some pesto on the bottom of the bowl, we throw in a little bit on the top, and now we're going to give it a really nice mix so it's really well coated. We're just going to add just a touch more sauce. It looked like it could have needed a little bit more. And we're going to mix until this pasta is beautifully coated. Now let's plate a delicious bowl of this green goodness. So a couple hefty spoonfuls of this penne covered with this beautiful pesto sauce. And now the tomatoes and garlic on top. How amazing does this look? Super duper fresh. All the main ingredients came right from my garden, right outside the door. And a little bit of basil on top. Minimal ingredients, beautiful, simple, and delicious. What more could you ask for out of a bowl of pasta?
I'm really excited to try this, and it just smells wonderful. Like, I love the smell of tomatoes and basil. It like reminds me of like my childhood and like in my parents' and my grandparents' garden, because all they grew was tomatoes and basil. So, I mean, we used to eat stuff like this all the time, and the combination is just unreal. Let's hit it with some cheese. Even though there is cheese in this, there is some room for cheese, there always is. And a good rule is once you can't see the pasta anymore, there's enough cheese. But let's make sure that we get a little bit in each bite. So we get some of the pasta, you get some of those tomatoes with the garlic. Mmm. This is so good. This is between the freshness of that basil from the pesto, the sweetness from those tomatoes. Oh, and the cheese totally makes it. You know, some people make their pesto like vegetarian pesto or vegan pesto. no cheese. I don't know about that, because the cheese really, really makes this dish. Let's even put a little bit more on there. This is so good. I mean, if there's any of like end of the summer, like early fall pastas, when tomatoes and basil are still growing and they're still plentiful, I mean, this is it. So while I'm eating this, I didn't have any lunch today. I'm super hungry. You go check out my mom's spaghetti or my Italian deli style pasta salad. I'll see you there. Thanks.